everyone, and welcome to the JAM Yearbook. I'm Matt.
I'm Jim. We're here to visit a different year of music each week and share our opinions on what we found.
Welcome to version 1975. We finally made it back to the 70s.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah, a lot of people from our generation claim the 80s to be the best decade of music. The 70s give that decade a run for its money. For me, you just can't beat the variety and sound quality of the 70s.
Nope, you can't at all. It's like every genre held the top spot on the charts at one point or another, many of these years in the 70s.
Oh yeah, country, pop, R&B, funk, rock, folk, whatever the Eagles in America are. They're all sitting at the same table having a drink. And there's not really any major deaths to talk about this week. Not to disrespect, people who did pass away in 75, but there wasn't really anything significant for us. So we'll just hit on into the music. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with a heavy hitter, often on one of the best album lists of all time, at least I think in the top 20, maybe top 10. And Jakob Dylan called this album his parents arguing. It's Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks. So Blood on the Tracks was a Maroon 5 album that I had to get through on one of my previous shows. I've listened to this album extensively, and Shelter from the Storm, Tangled Up in Blue, those songs I knew, I really enjoyed them. The rest, I just didn't get, or at times even understood what he said. For me, Bob Dylan is the kind of artist that a certain group of people really get and embrace. I'm jealous of those people, to be honest with you. I'm not in that group. Like many other musicians, I do like some music selectively. The rest I can't get into enough to be considered a fan.
Yeah, I really wanted to hate Blood on the Tracks, but I found myself really enjoying it. I don't think I'd ever listened to the whole album before, and you're going to hate me for saying this and what I just said, but when you brought Dire Straits' Tunnel of Love into your 5 for version 1980, I believe I said Mark Knopfler's singing is reminiscent of Dylan. I stand by that, though Knopfler is much better. I had to read the lyrics to all the songs on Blood on the Tracks, and that really helped. But when he goes full Dylan, it finishes those lines on a higher note, and it's emphasized. And oh man, just never go full Dylan. That's what gets satirized, and I think that's what people just immediately. That's the thought that comes into their head when they think Dylan. But I was open to the mood on this album. But boy, he is wordy. And I reserve the right to change my opinion when I listen to this album next month and go, oh man, no, just so I think it's going to be one of those mood albums.
I got a lot of respect for the fact that you found something in listening to this album. And I didn't dislike it when I listened to it the first time around. It just didn't draw me into being a Dylan fan. Kind of like the guys who throw on a Grateful Dead album once in a while, or when Terrapin wound up on one of our playlists. We enjoyed having that there, and it was something different for us to listen to that has a group of people who really have, I don't want to use the term hero worship because I think that kind of degrades the fans, but I think they really have an appreciation that I'm just not able to find. And like I said, I wish I could be in that group of people. I'm not going to join these assholes who think you're dumb if you like Dylan, you're dumb if you like any of these other
definitely
bands.
Not.
And especially you read the lyrics. I'm sure it was a lot like reading a lot of poetry.
It is. I was just going to say that he is a poet.
Yeah.
He really is. And a lot of his songs, there's a lot of words there, but it's not like it's a constant verse chorus verse chorus verse chorus. He kind of tells a story, so I can appreciate that. And this album really did have a better sound than, some of his really early stuff.
Yeah, it does have a good sound.
Yeah, it's a little more full.
Yeah. Well, I guess, being a poet and having the kind of following that he has, it's one of the reasons why he's considered one of the greatest. He's a wordsmith, and people have a lot of respect for that. So like I said, I'm glad you like it. I dug into this album, as I said, but I'll always lean toward being that guy who has the greatest hits in my collection just because I feel like I need to own it. But I appreciate what you found in it. Another big album that I'm going to bring up straight away is the Born to Run album. I think Bruce Springsteen is also sometimes hit or miss for us, but I can really appreciate how this album had a quick rise to fame for him. The title track Through Headphones is absolutely amazing to me. Can I call a song cinematic? because when I hear this
Oh, yeah.
song and I'm in a quiet place, I swear it's like I'm listening to a movie play out in my head. You have the piano going, horns, the drums. It's not a guitar song at all. It's got all of this other stuff going on. And then
Oh,
it
many
reaches,
layers.
yeah. And then it reaches this crescendo that's massive. It's like an orchestration of all these instruments.
Mhm.
And then it breaks down. And the way it pieces itself together in songwriting is a triumph, in my opinion. I can't go on and give the same praise to everything else on the album, but when I listen to Born to Run, I key in and I give it a close listen every single time because there's something new.
Oh, yeah, I had the same experience with Born to Run. I don't think I've ever given that song or even the album enough time, because it's always just been something that was, it came on the radio. Oh, Born to
Mhm.
Run, and I've always liked 10th Avenue Freeze Out,
It's a
but
good tune. Yeah.
there's been something making me keep most of Bruce Springsteen's catalog at arm's length. But you said it right there. And I reminded myself this week how important headphones are to really hearing music,
Mhm.
deep listening. Because if you just sit there and you listen to music on your phone, with no headphones, you just get that crappy little speaker, or a computer speaker. It just does not do music justice.
No.
Born to Run, it really took on a new life for me because of headphones. I've
Yep.
listened to that song in stereos before, but it was easy to tune out the nuances that
Mhm.
are going on there, because there is a lot of stuff. You just said there's a lot of layers going on in that song. So moving on from those two huge albums,
Mhm.
I have possibly an unpopular opinion to share.
Oh, not you,
I know.
Matt.
I know you're surprised. I know. I know. So we'll see how much hate we get, or I get, for this. But I wish I wasn't so tired of Bad Company. I'm tired of it.
Yeah. I was editing down the 1988 episode, and as I got to the end of it, we were laughing about how excited we were to get to 1975 due to the lack of fatigue we were going to have.
Yeah.
But
Here
here
we
we
go.
go with Bad Company. For our age group, this has always been like an easy to learn rock song band. Is when you're playing music, Shooting Star, Feel
Mhm.
Like Making Love were a couple of probably the first songs in the first year of playing music I ever learned how to play on guitar. And it's great when you're young and you're just discovering, but it's a bit generic down the road, kind of like maybe Steve Miller. No offense to Steve Miller.
Oh yeah, and there are certain bands that you need their greatest hits albums to be considered an adult. It's like getting tired of them as a rite of passage.
Yeah. And I don't think that they've been a rite of passage for other people for a lot of years. So it might have just been an 80s thing for us.
Oh yeah, somebody should tell Clear Channel or whatever conglomerate programs classic rock radio. You've
Yeah.
also you also had to own Bob Dylan's greatest hits just to look like you tried.
Hey, I just admitted to trying.
I tried too. I
Yeah.
tried.
But the other night I was listening to a playlist from 1975 and I got onto Shooting Star by Bad Company. And I was listening to the lyrics. And, it's about a guy who rises to fame and then just dies from drugs and alcohol. And I'm like, what the fuck, Johnny?
Do better, Johnny.
Yeah. Is this
I
all the
was
70 stars?
Yeah, I was listening to our research playlist and Feel Like Making Love came on. I said, nope. It didn't I just took it right off, because as soon as the guitar lick came in, I'm like, oh, no, I can't. I just can't listen to it.
Yeah, this is simple rock that could be easily covered by bar bands. And I think it just has that kind of Friday night appeal after work. You're drinking, kind of back in the day, a working man kind of tune.
Oh yeah, in its day, it was the shit.
Yeah. It was the escape club of the
Oh,
70s, maybe.
Jesus, you're giving the Escape Club too much credit. The Escape Club is the shits, which is not to be confused with being the shit.
Oh,
They're
two different things.
completely opposite.
What I found was that chorus that to me when I was younger sounded huge to Feel Like Making Love. It
Didn't
sucks.
it?
Yeah, but it sucks now.
I know.
It's like it pretends to be exciting, but it's not. It's kind of dull. Could it be just a production thing, what it was then, and it sounded better then than songwriting and what's progressed and the way things sound now? But there's other
Yeah,
stuff from the 70s that still sounds good.
the harmonies, they got a really good sound, but yeah, after your 100th listen, it's boring, because a lot of their songs really kind of have a low energy to
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
I don't know if it's lowbrow rock or music to get stoned to. I don't.
You mean Lowenbrow rock?
Jeez. Oh,
Well, dude, let me say, I never got stoned and listened to Bad Company in my life. For me, I kind of hear it just kind of as two-stepping redneck guys and gals at the Del Bar on a
Oh
Friday
yeah,
and Saturday night.
it's probably more drinking music.
Yeah. In 1975, Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here was the album that was worth getting stoned to. I think Bad Company was just stoner filler, if anything. Aerosmith was better stoner music for the rock and roll generation. And as a guy who played with a lot of dudes that smoked some weed back in the 70s, not once did one of those guys say, hey, let's listen to some Bad Company. So maybe it's a Vermont stoner thing.
Yeah, or I'm probably just generalizing classic rock at sandpit parties, you know.
Ah, sandpit parties.
So, but anyways, did anyone anywhere ever say, let's listen to Bad Company? I think it was just on and no one copped to it. Like it just got put in the CD changer.
Or the idiot stoner who had bad taste.
They got all the seeds and stems. They got pranked by the real stoners. Look at this fucking guy listening to 10 from 6.
Oh man, I hope we didn't make anybody just chuck their Bad Company CD out of the car. We apologize if we did.
Well, it is a frisbee.
Yeah. But the real stoners were listening to Wish You Were Here.
So is Bad Company like Training Wheels rock made for younger brothers then?
I actually think that's a perfect description. And with a chorus that can be played for like 5 seconds and sell Time Life cassettes. Yeah.
But really, isn't Foghat just Bad Company under a different name?
Yeah. It's one of my problems with a lot of 70s quote classic rock. It has a similar sound. And I guess it's probably the sound of that era. It's just not one that has always completely stood out to me. I think that's why bands like Black Sabbath and Queen really stood out, and Aerosmith, of course. I think when you look at rock and those groundbreaking sonic sounds that allowed bands to stand apart from Bad Company, Foghat, and Nazareth, that they didn't hit that mark. You're not going to see their albums in the top 100 rock albums of all time list. But then you have Kiss, Heart, and Skynyrd. They were probably close to that sound, but there was a uniqueness that they had that helped them stand apart. And then you had others that were just really original. Well, I didn't say yet, Bowie. We talked about Bruce Springsteen. I just mentioned Queen, Fleetwood Mac, and then ZZ Top. They all kind of made their own mark. To my surprise this week, I really enjoyed the ZZ Top album from 75. I knew of Tush, but I didn't ever listen to that entire album. And it kind of took me by surprise.
They aren't really that far removed. They got the boogie woogie thing that separates them.
Yeah.
But their older stuff, it's pretty tired for me as well. And Jesus, this is almost mirroring our pop rant. You know, it's like, let's throw the Guess Who and Ted Nugent under the bus too.
Yeah.
Let's call this we should probably just refer to this as guitar rock so people know what we're referring to.
Old man guitar bands.
Yeah, old man guitar bands, Mercedes.
Yes.
Classic rock, it's one of those umbrella terms, right? That houses, it's got the stuff like Bowie, Queen, that bands that you just mentioned. We're slamming it pretty hard, but it served a purpose when we found it. I'm sure. Well, I shouldn't speak for you. I know when I found it, it served a purpose, and maybe that's why rock bands are hard to find now. All the good looks have been used up. It's really just fatigue.
Yeah. I guess a bit, but at least we had these guys all touring and really putting in the work to make their music get out there instead of, we talk about the rant. It wasn't a corporate machine that was just shoving music videos in everybody's faces.
Yeah, but there were, I don't know if it still goes on now, but there were, at least scouts going out to shows and, trying to find bands to sign.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I'm sure they were looking for bands that sounded just like the hot thing, right?
Yeah.
Just not, and it's probably, the baby brother of the huge corporate machine we have now. But boy, wouldn't that have been a dream job for like 3 to 5 years, going around trying to find new bands?
I would do this now. I would do this now.
I would too. That would be so awesome, but I don't know if what I like would get airplay. But I'm sure, after like 3 to 5 years, it'll get pretty tiring going around. But man, those years would be fun. I wonder if this generation, well, actually, I think Harry and Mercedes kind of alluded to it. They're probably finding it on their own without it being force fed, through classic rock radio, because they're not tuning into radio.
Yeah.
But, I had a part in my life when I was younger where I really enjoyed it. So, and in thinking about some of the earlier comments you made, did you ever really enjoy it? Was this like in direct conflict to your pop sense? Kind of like, your middle finger to the bullies who you thought would have beaten you up for listening to pop that you talked about last week? Just fatigue like me?
No, I did enjoy it. I did. I talked about how I was learning some of the songs on guitar. And back when you're learning to play 3 chords, you think you're pretty cool until you progress beyond that. And then I think one of the things that happens is you realize that that band was just playing 3 chords and there wasn't really anything musically special about it. But my brother was really into a lot of this old man guitar rock. And I looked up to him as a kid. So whatever he was listening to, I wanted to listen to. He was
Mhm.
5 years older than me and he had a better connection to it. It's just been fatigue for me too, I think. I just talked in 1988 about owning what you might still like when you're a kid. And I talked about a lot that I was willing to own and admit that I liked this stuff, but not really in a way that I can ever go back to. I don't get super nostalgic about it the way I do the 1988 stuff. And that could do with being in my teen years at that point when you're having more fun, you have more memories
Mhm.
created to it. I think the category this guitar rock falls into, like you just said, was part of my life where I really enjoyed it too, but
Mhm.
it just got outplayed too early for me. Maybe working in kitchens in my life and having classic rock radio on all day long killed it for me as
Oh,
well.
been there, done that. Oh my
But
God.
it just doesn't need as many spins in my life anymore. I've had enough. And there was a time when I did play Bad Company on guitar and enjoyed them, but that didn't last as long as my love for some Barry Manilow.
Oh, oh my God, Barry Manilow. And I remember like I don't know, 10, oh, probably even longer than that ago, probably like 18 years ago when I was starting to rebuild my vinyl collection. I made sure if I saw like a Bad Company or whatever, I'm like, oh, I gotta have it, right? Because it does sound better on vinyl. But when I'm going through my records to listen to stuff, I see them, I'm like, no, I
Yeah.
don't want to. You
Yep.
know, I'm glad the records, some of them only cost me like $1, so I don't feel so bad going through them.
I had to judge my vinyl buying that way as well. I had to look at an album and think to myself, am I going to listen to this more than twice? And if the answer is
Yes.
no, then I'm not going to buy it. I like collecting, and I understand collectors
Hmm.
that will buy things and never remove them from boxes, and they just really enjoy knowing they own something. But for
Yes.
me, in a relationship with music, I want to own what I'm going to listen to. And
Yes.
yeah.
And that's what I did a lot of this week was listening to records that I rarely listen to,
Mhm.
and just being really, really judgmental about it and going, I'm not holding on to this album because I like one song,
Yeah.
right? That's what a 45 is for. Or that's what,
Exactly.
or that's what streaming music is for.
That's
I
what it's
want to hear
for
that
now. Yeah.
one song. All right. So enough guitar rock. Let's move on to glam
Okay.
because you've already broached the David Bowie subject. When we were texting about the show this week, you brought up Mick Ronson. You said his album Play Don't Worry had that Bowie sound. And I didn't recognize the name at first, because not being a Bowie fan, but it makes sense. He was in the Spiders from Mars.
Yeah. If nobody else recognizes the name, he was the guitar player for David Bowie's band, The Spiders from Mars. I think he played on a couple of albums. I think Pinups was another album that he played on with Bowie. And they had a pretty good relationship, a pretty good friendship. Bowie was the kind of guy that liked to change around musicians that he played with for a lot of years. So to have Ronson around for more than one album and to really kind of be close to him, that was significant for Bowie. There's actually a song on the album called White Light, White Heat, which he salvaged from the Bowie session and is also a title of a Velvet Underground album.
Well, yeah, he co-produced Lou Reed's Transformer with Bowie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I enjoyed that album, Play Don't Worry. That was that probably because it was new to me, right?
Yeah. I didn't think it was that great, but that's fine. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad that you took the time to listen to it. I don't know if he naturally sounds like Bowie when he sings, or he was just trying to ride the coattail because there were some similarities that I heard in the music. It's not awful, but it's not one of those albums I'll see myself going out and buying because I'll just go back and listen to Bowie first.
Yeah, and I've accused Bowie of being a chameleon, so it's hard to tell who influenced who, right?
Mhm.
But judging by what I heard this week, Mick Ronson was integral to Bowie's sound
Yeah.
in that Bowie era. And it may have been a situation where together there was just that connection, right? Because it sounded so natural.
I think it was natural. Yeah, they definitely had a close connection. When David Bowie ceased the Ziggy Stardust tour and band and was going to be done playing in that persona, there were only two people that he informed ahead of time that he was going to do this, and that was his manager and Mick Ronson. And then he did it live on stage. The rest of the band that he played with found out that night their gig was up. They were done. So he must,
Oh, and you
he,
tell them on stage,
yeah. So
and
he
you got to
must,
smile.
well, he didn't even tell them. He just told the audience, okay, everybody, just so you know, this is the last night of Ziggy Stardust.
Wow.
You've witnessed it right here. So he must have had a conversation with Mick Ronson ahead of time, since Mick Ronson went on to do more with him. And I can imagine that was a pretty good relationship that they had.
Oh, yeah, it definitely sounded like it. In version 1977, we eulogized Mark Bolan.
Yep.
And we recognize, both of us, that we have this lack of familiarity with most of his work. Since we're here in 75, I checked out the T-Rex album, Bolan's Zip Gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's still probably ignorance of his music. I liked it, but I didn't find it groundbreaking. Maybe because it's later in his career and probably later in glam in general, kind of winding down.
Mm-hmm.
It was good, but it didn't really move me.
Can you imagine being in our band back in the day, the Tripping Andersons, and making an album called Bowen's Semi-Automatic 22? Like naming your album
Bowen's
after
Squirrel Gun.
but the fact that you're in a band, the band has a name, T-Rex, and then the album is still got your name on it.
Yeah, I know.
It's
like it should just say Mark Bolan's T-Rex.
It should say that. Present right. Zip Gun. Yeah. It wasn't really my cup of tea either. I think that he's hit and miss, but he died so young. I think that's why people were affected by him. He had a lot of what if left in front of him.
Mm.
But before we step away from glam, one last time, I'm going to go back to Bowie. I think this will be the last time, maybe not. But the album,
I tried to get away from it.
Yeah, the album Young Americans was released in 1975, and I've been a Bowie fan since my teens. Now, you mentioned to me last week that doing this show in headphones has changed your perspective a bit, and you brought up this album as well.
Yeah, it's starting to. Bowie is still. He's such a challenge for me, and some of it is his voice.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really set well in my head. It almost feels like it's got a bit of show tune quality to it.
Oh yeah,
because there is that boldness and the vibrato, and it's dramatic. But deep listening with headphones is definitely key to really paying attention to what's going on, especially for a song that you've only kind of cursory heard on the radio. You've never given it that deep listen. And musically, I am 50-50 on Young Americans. It probably depends on the day, but that's up from 30-70. So we've already improved. but I think most of my challenge beyond his voice is fatigue, right? As soon as I hear the Rebel opening, and I know it's not this year, but it's another nope, skip. I and Fame is the one song that I came away with a deeper appreciation for. I heard more texture in the song than I did before. There's a lot of bold sounds and big moments, the horns coming in, bow, that kind of grab your attention. And in the past, it prevented me from hearing the more nuanced guitar parts that are in the background.
Yeah, I think Bowie has a lot of fans who will listen to an entire album. But I think the majority of Bowie fans, almost like Dylan in a way, will appreciate a greatest hits compilation of his albums more. And I think you take songs like Young Americans and Fame, and you mentioned Rebel, and we'll go to other albums in other years. I think Bowie at this point in his life was still trying to achieve what we're going to see down the road with the Let's Dance album. And when we get there, that's when things will be very different for him. I think he was still trying to write hit songs. After Ziggy Stardust, his creativity versus his need to be a superstar clashed a little bit. And
okay, because I was going to ask you about that, because you said it's like he was building up to what he was going to do with Let's Dance. And I thought that maybe Let's Dance was more like his cash grab.
I think
or fame grab.
but I think Let's Dance was his let's go into the studio and really produce a slick album. When we get there,
Viable.
yeah, well, when we get there, we'll talk about how Niles
Yeah.
Rodgers was the producer of the album and Stevie Ray Vaughan was playing the guitars on it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, so there's a lot that goes on that changes there, and Bowie was wise in what he did. But he brought John Lennon into the studio when he did this Young Americans album, and Fame has a songwriting credit from John Lennon. He stopped by the studio and he helped him write it. And I think that that's why that song kind of has a wider appeal, because when Bowie reached out to some stars that had some success commercially, he was more commercially successful. Young Americans itself, that song, I brought up a lyric in the 2016 episode when we talked about when he died. It's a lyric I've always kind of carried with me down the road. I thought it was pretty significant. Let's make sure it's not poignant for me personally. I turn 50 next week. The lyric is, we live for just these 20 years and then we die for 50 more. And I think it's that point of you peak kind of at 20 when you're in adulthood, and then
definitely.
Yeah, and everything else is a rat race. Yeah.
That is definitely one of probably the most meaningful lines I've ever heard in a song.
It's a really poignant lyric on the reality of accepting adulthood.
Yeah, and it's almost like a throwaway line because it doesn't really stand out when you're listening to the song.
Yeah.
Yep. And I didn't know Lennon was involved with this either. I didn't really read into the liner notes, and I wonder if that's why he got, permission to use the "I read the news today, oh boy" line in Young Americans.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be, it would be very fitting for that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So breaking away from the glam rock and the guitar rock, punk was making its big mark in the 1970s, and especially at this time. Maybe not on vinyl yet. I don't think everything had been recorded and released, but definitely spreading through print. The punk music scene was starting to thrive at CBGB's, and bands were becoming more widely known kind of in a different way. The launch of Punk magazine. It was known as the print version of the Ramones during its time.
Hey, the Ramones!
Yeah, I said it first. It's 1975, and I said the Ramones first. Holy shit.
God damn.
Yeah, they debuted on stage in 74, but in 1975, Blondie, Patti Smith, and the Talking Heads all had their first gigs at CBGB's. Mary Harron, who was a well-known writer, I think she wrote American Psycho, the screenplay for the film, and Lester Bangs, who has been a well-known music writer for Rolling Stone. He got fired from them for being too critical. He was wearing Matt's asshole hat. they were contributors.
Hey, my asshole hat.
Was this magazine ever on your radar?
No.
Elaborate, please.
I will. No, this was the first I'd heard of it when you brought it up. At 3 years old, it probably would have scarred me for life. I probably wouldn't have developed my love for, Blondie and the Ramones. But even in my teen years, I never did. I never even knew it was there. But they'd only published 15 issues between 76 and 79. But I would really like to read them now and compare how those groups are written about now, and see if any opinions have changed.
That'd be interesting.
It would. And John Holstrom, he illustrated the covers of the Ramones albums, Road to Ruin and Rocket to Russia.
Yeah, the art style of the magazine was very much like Mad Magazine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that style.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So, okay, that's cool. I would recommend maybe going back and taking a look and see if you can find it. I'm sure if we just Google Punk magazine, there'll be a way.
I did find they do have a website, but they would only offer JPEGs of the covers and the table of contents. But it sounded like maybe it was becoming an online kind of magazine now.
Okay.
But I still got to dig into it more to see what's actually going on there.
I got a lot of respect for them for not trying to come up in the mid 2000s then and take advantage of the pop punk scene that have emerged from that. So
it would have looked really different. You go from having, Blondie, Patti Smith, the Ramones to having Green Day and Blink 182.
Yeah, it would have.
Yeah, that would have been, that would have been so weird.
That would have been weird. All right, before we get to our five, there are a few big albums that we're going to talk about just closing off this year, and I'll let you lead with us.
Oh yeah, well, we can't go away because we never really talk about Pink Floyd a whole lot, and probably because we haven't hit on a good year to talk about them yet.
Yeah.
But Wish You Were Here. I mean,
Mhm.
that was out in 75. This is a rite of passage album.
Yeah, it is.
I was never really into the Sid Barrett stuff. I know to some that's probably like sacrilegious. Hopefully, hopefully you're not just being the cool kid in the crowd, right?
No, no, that's like the Dylan and the Bowie fans that I talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
exactly. But yeah, it's a rite of passage album. If you haven't heard Wish You Were Here by your 20th birthday, do it now.
Yeah.
Just it's there's no reason why you haven't heard and fallen in love with this album. It's spectacular.
I was listening to the title track Wish You Were Here the other night through headphones, thinking to myself I was going to have as much fatigue as I had for everything else we've listened to, because I can play it. I can get the guitar right now and bring it out and play it. I've listened to it a bazillion times, but I haven't listened to it in a really long time. And it was really cool to put it on. I didn't realize how raw the recording of the song was
Yeah.
compared to a lot of the overproduced Pink Floyd sound you get from other albums. It does have, the snippets of phones ringing and background voices and things like that going on, but the vocal and the guitar are almost like somebody sat down with a cheap studio mic and computer and just laid it down casually and not as professionally polished as you hear a lot of other Pink Floyd stuff down the road. But there was something nice about that. It was really pretty.
Yeah. And it goes back to the 70s. The sounds are just so much, the sound quality is
Yeah.
just better. It's
Yeah.
so unfucked with.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds authentic. It sounds awesome. I love it. And Wish You Were Here, like you said, it's one of those albums I see and I'm like, oh no, I'm fatigued. But every time I see it in my rack and I put it on, I'm like, I find something new
Yeah, there's still
to
something
fall
great.
in love with.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
Yeah. This is a good run of Pink Floyd albums over the next few years.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Yeah. So another big one was Queen, A Night at the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll need to listen to their first album sequentially before I can really form an opinion. But after listening to The Night of the Opera, I I want to say that this was maybe a diverging point for them
I think you're right.
because they had like Bring Back Leroy Brown on Sheer Heart Attack, but You're My Best Friend, that is pure pop.
Ageless pure pop.
Yeah. Oh, completely. It sounds
Mhm.
like brand new today.
Yeah.
But I don't recall them doing a song like that on their previous albums. And Bohemian Rhapsody showed what they're capable of on a grand scale.
I talked earlier about Born to Run being this big, epic, powerful song, and listening to it through headphones and everything going on. And as much as I raved about that earlier in the show, I do think Bohemian Rhapsody probably really just is the cream of the crop when it comes to absolute genius music production. Dude,
it pales in comparison. Everything pales in comparison to Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, it's got operetta, rock and roll, the tone of Brian May's guitar at the solo at the end, a piano intro. It just is out of this world.
You want to ride.
Yeah, it is. It's a roller coaster ride of a song. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
It's so beautiful. And even if you're tired of that song, you have to be impressed, if not blown away by what they accomplished.
Oh, yeah.
If you are tired of it and you just like, oh, that song sucks, I've heard it too much, just listen to it and put on some headphones and deep listen and pay attention to the trip that they're taking you on. Mm-hmm. It's, oh my God, it's so amazing. And I also like it when bands have other members that take on lead singing duty like they do on this album, because it just adds a layer of talent. It shows you what the band can do. And it kind of strips away the thought that maybe there's ego. Oh, no, you can't sing because it's Freddie Mercury. Oh, shit, Roger Taylor's got a good voice. Brian May's got a good voice. And they all are incredible songwriters. They're all in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, right? I think
they are.
That up.
Yeah, they all are. Yep.
Maybe version 74 or something.
Yep.
Queen is not music to be passively listened to. It's dramatic. It fits that name, Queen.
Yeah, it's
especially
royalty.
Those backing vocals, they're bold, they're regal. It's fucking Queen.
absolute royalty of rock and roll.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And this is a band that we've kind of really shit on quite a bit. You know it. It's Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic.
But this might as well be a greatest hits album to you and I.
So fucking great.
Uh-huh.
And we've been waiting because we knew it was coming for a
Yes.
year to finally embrace Aerosmith and say Aerosmith is fucking great.
Yes.
You know, we just not have a lot. We have just not hit on years where we've been able to give them glowing reviews because there are so many compilations and just later career, not very good albums. You know, Toys in
Mhm.
the Attic. It's awesome, even if it is stoner music. I don't care.
It is exactly the reason why Aerosmith is Aerosmith.
Oh
It's
yeah,
one of those albums that a band can make and then just live forever on. You're talking Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion, Dream On. You're
no
not
more,
losing.
no more.
Yeah.
Toys in the Attic.
Poison the Attic.
Oh,
Yeah, you're not losing anything by listening to this album.
definitely not. So this is their third album, and it's the most successful in the U.S. It was
Mhm.
9 times platinum. That piece of shit, Get a Grip, is diamond in Canada.
No.
Do better, Canada.
Oh, blame Canada.
Blame Canada.
Awesome. So is that our 1975?
You know what? For what we needed to lean into with rock and everything, yeah, I think it is. I think we're done with 75. We're always going to miss something, but we got to stop sometime.
We do have to stop. We do. All right. So we've reached our 5 then. And Matt, you chose 1975. Let's just say it generically then. As you say, you get to go first. What is your first song from
I'm gonna go first.
1975?
Okay, I'm going to start with Chris Squire and Hold Out Your Hand. Yes, virtuoso bassist
Who?
Chris
Huh?
Squire.
What? Here goes
Chris
Matt
Squire.
again.
Yes. Oh, come on, you know yes, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, don't worry, this song doesn't go all yes on you. So for people who are like Jim and I who are prog challenged, you know, I could listen to his bass all day. That tone is just so amazing. And how obviously how he plays it. I mean, he is awesome. And his bass is front and center, and he's got that classic yes voice that you've heard. There's organs, there's orchestration. I don't even think there's guitar on this song. But that bass lick, it's so simple, yet with his guitar tone, it bites and it's badass. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's a great song.
And just so you know, this is off his Fish Out of Water, his first solo album.
Yeah, it is. And if you're not a Yes fan, I recommend everybody go check it out. I enjoyed listening to it yesterday. I told you I checked out all the songs. It's good. My first song?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to just lead right back to Aerosmith, and I'm going to pick the song Sweet Emotion. And that's going to be my number 1 for this year. I it's not a matter of trying to choose popular songs. For me, Sweet Emotion has always had kind of a special place. My favorite movie of all time for many, many years. I was a film minor in college, and I wanted to be a filmmaker and an actor at one point in my life. So that film was Dazed Confused, a Richard Linklater film. You may have seen it. It featured Matthew McConaughey as Wooderson and Ben Affleck as Benny, and it was all around the year 1976. So this would have been something that came out the year before, a bunch of high school guys. And the opening scene of this movie, you see this classic American muscle car come into the high school parking lot and slowly turn a corner into a parking space in slow motion to that bass riff that comes in at the start of Sweet
What
Emotion.
a great bass riff.
It's just such a cool way to start a song. I do wonder if they were just hanging out at practice one day and he was just fiddling around, and it's something you might just fiddle around and come up with by accident.
Yeah.
And they were like, whoa, let's write a song about that. But you put this together in the scene of the film, and it just, to me, it captures that era for me in a great way. It's also really cool. Steven Tyler layers fantastic vocals into the song with what he does. Joe Perry's backup vocals on it, but then Joe Perry's singular guitar riff in the middle of it, leading the verses, driving it, is really cool. It kind of comes in off beat. the way it chunks into the song. I, I can't say enough good things about this song. It even has a breakdown in it at the
Yeah.
end that's just it's a lot of fun. So
Yep.
Sweet Emotion, that's my number one for 1975.
Awesome. This is one of those songs where you think it's old and tired until you hear it. And then it's just like, no, this song still's got it. It's still got it. It's
It
fucking
does.
awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right, number two, Matt, what do you got?
Number two, I am going to go with Willie Nelson and Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Such a fucking pretty
Uh,
song.
oh, it is. And in a lot of these songs in the 70s, I think they're going to stick out like a sore thumb because they are so different and the sound is so different.
Mhm.
I really hope the song, if you're listening on shuffle, comes on right after Slipknot, or maybe right before Slipknot, so you can have that jarring sense to yourself. This has always been one of my favorite Willie songs. The sparseness really conveys the feeling of the song
Mhm.
and the tone and the lyrics. It's a perfect match.
Yeah, it's so good. Off the album Redheaded Stranger, which
Yes.
has been voted many times the greatest country album of all time.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and this is the most popular track off the album. And I'm not surprised that you chose it for this year. It's a great
Yeah,
number
good
two.
song. Good song.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, what do you got for number two?
My number two is going to be the song Low Rider by
Oh,
War.
love it. Love the funk.
Low Rider by War. It is. Is it funk? Is it rock? What's going on here? Who's hitting the
Everything.
cowbell?
Right.
Like it is. That it's another song that just has really cool music dynamics and space between sound,
Oh,
and then
definitely.
that vocal in the song is as defined as any vocalist that you would know that's been popular for the past 50 years. I don't know the guy who sang in War. I
Yep.
couldn't tell you his name, but when you hear the start of this song and him starting to sing, to me, it's just as poignant as Barry White, as Tom Jones, as Elvis. It's that guy. And
Yep.
the song has a cool dynamic of instrumental going on in it with horns. So yeah, it's one of those songs, like I said, that kind of falls into that. You can play it on a classic rock station and it's rock, but you're right. It's still funk and it
Yeah.
just kind of slides in between all that. And yeah, man, Low Rider by War, great song. If you don't know it, go out and listen to it. And if you know it, go listen to it again because you'll have fun.
Oh, the 70s are great for music like this, where everything is just given its space.
Mm-hmm.
And today's music could learn a lesson from subtlety is so important. It's so powerful. Especially you just listen to Lowrider. There's so many things going on, but they're
Yeah,
not competing for your attention.
not at all.
Everything's got a moment. That's a great song.
Yeah.
So on to my number three,
Yeah,
and
let's hear your number three.
I will go with Bruce Springsteen in 10th Avenue Freeze Out.
Oh, you mentioned this
Yay!
earlier. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't really know much about this song. So I'm like, well, let me do a little bit of research. And it's a biography of the band getting together. Bad Scooter is Bruce. BS, Bruce Springsteen, right? And the big man, obviously, I always knew that was Clarence Clemens, as soon as the big man joined the band. But what does the title mean? Bruce has no idea, or at least he's not telling you what it is. But 10th Avenue in Belmar, New Jersey has an intersection with E Street, where the band got their name. E Street. So,
Yeah.
and the original keyboardist, David Sanchez, I apologize if I butchered that name, he was living on E Street at the
Okay.
time. But this is one of the few Bruce Springsteen songs that have always stayed with me. But after this week in Born to Run, I'm going to give it more listens, the whole album, because I really have. And this is one of the great things about doing this show is it doesn't happen all the time, but an older album like Born to Run that I've written off so many times, I'm actually finding I can finally have an appreciation for
Okay. Yeah.
beyond just one song. But 10th Avenue Freeze Out is a really good song. I love the energy, the horns, especially the piano, that constant I can really dig a song that does that. It's got a nice groove.
And a great saxophone solo from the big man.
Damn right.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Awesome. My number 3. Well, I might as well keep it funky, and I'm gonna go with Parliament Funkadelic, with possibly one of their most well-known tunes of all time, "Tear the Roof Off." Tear the roof off, the mother. Tear the roof off, the mother sucker. Tear the roof off, the
Mother sucker.
sucker.
Tear the roof off the mother sucker.
It's such a great song. The bass breakdown when it starts. We got a real kind of thing. Do, 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 do. It's just that descending line is so cool. And then it rises back up. We want the funk. And if you ever have the chance to go see Parliament Funkadelic, well, they're getting up there in age now. I was able to go see them about 15 years ago, and they were up in age then. So I think at that point, when I saw them, George Clinton came out on stage and he played about 4 songs with the band, and the band played all night long other stuff. And it was, it was a great night, but he still came on stage for this song. This was a song that he was going to be there for. And like I said, it breaks down, it gets down low, and then it comes up, and the audience, when it hits that chorus, it's just, you're just dancing. You're in a groove, you're in a place. And
everybody is singing "Give Up the Funk."
Oh yeah,
everybody's just singing. This is an iconic song.
Yes, it is one of the most iconic funk songs of all time, in my opinion.
Oh yes. All right, so on to my number 4, and I'm gonna go with Kiss. "Love Her All I Can." This is off the Dress to Kill album. It's a nice, short, catchy rock song.
Yeah,
Paul and Gene have, to me, the harmonies they do on the song, they're really infectious. I really like to hear it over and over. And you get a short Peter Criss drum solo sandwiched in between a couple Ace Frehley solos. It's just got a good groove that I've always enjoyed listening to.
Yeah, it's just a good, tight rock song. You're right, and it's catchy.
Exactly.
I was surprised I didn't know this song. For the length of it, and it not being an overly played and not being a long song or anything like that, I was kind of surprised. I'd
be surprised if it was 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And really, if it's the only thing off this album, anybody probably, well, not anybody, but people who don't listen to Kiss, the only song people probably know is "Rock and Roll All Night" and "Party Every Other Day."
Yep. So yeah, great. Thanks for bringing it, because it's great to get exposed to these other songs off the album.
Cool. All right, Jim, what's your number 4?
My number 4, well, if there's any song that should either precursor the Slipknot song or come after it, in my opinion, it's Linda Ronstadt's "Love Is a Rose."
That would be a nice sandwich.
Yeah, it would be right in between. I say Linda Ronstadt's, but it's actually a Neil Young song. He wrote this song and covered by Linda Ronstadt. You can actually find Neil Young's version of it on one of his albums out there. It's also a great version. But I was going through 1975 and I came across Linda Ronstadt, and I thought, well, wait a minute, I've got to go take a look. And I brought this up and I listened to it. And I was like, well, it's listed as country, but it's bluegrass. It's really kind of a really pretty, lovely bluegrass interpretation of the song.
Yeah, and Neil's a line.
Yeah, Neil Young himself isn't really country. He's Neil Young. There's no way of knowing what Neil Young is. But this song just had this really pretty tone and sound to it, with banjos picking and the harmonies and a violin playing or fiddle. So to me, it had more of that really kind of bluegrass sound. There's no twang. Linda Ronstadt doesn't sing with a country twang the way she sings. But I love the lyrics to it. "Love is a rose, but you better not pick it. Only grows when it's on the vine." It's a really sweet sentiment. You lose your love when you say the word mine. Obviously, somebody who was scorned wrote this song, Neil Young.
Neil Young.
But what a great, great expression of the song that Linda Ronstadt did. And I've brought a few covers to the show. I think out of all the ones that I brought to the show that were also kind of well known during their time, because I think this was Linda Ronstadt's almost breakout in that era when she covered it, it's worthy of being on the playlist. So we will sandwich that between
Willie Nelson, Slipknot, Linda Ronstadt.
There we go.
And Linda Ronstadt, I think she was more well known for doing covers, wasn't she? "You're No Good."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I do remember somewhere in the 80s or maybe late 70s, she did do this country turn.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
But then she was
It's
also
it's a
part of
really
the
good song.
trio with Dolly Parton and Emmylou
I
Harris
forgot
at one
about that.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
forgot
she's
about that.
considered one of the greatest female vocalists of all time.
Oh yeah, no, she is talented,
Mhm.
and part of that is because she takes on these other artists' songs and makes them her own.
Yeah, she's one of those singers.
Yes, she does her own thing
Yep.
with it.
Yep. All right, so there's my number 4. So we are on to your last one, Matt. What's your number 5?
My number 5, I'm going to bring us back into the funk with the Commodores and Look What You've Done to Me.
Oh yeah,
And I'm going to quote Jim right here.
that's
I
me.
texted, I talked about last week. I always have this one spot in my 5 where it's like, oh, it's this. No, it's this. No, it's this. So I finally decided on this, and I texted Jim, no, this is what it is. And and Jim texted back, that Commodore song is full of ear candy.
Pow.
It,
Yes.
and I couldn't have said it any better myself. It's got such a tight drum beat
Mhm.
in the way the horns and the guitar play off each other.
Mhm.
And there's that subtle bass that comes in after the chorus. It's so cool because it's subtle. It's not in your face.
Nope.
And that's what makes it so great. And it's all in the midst of Lionel Richie sounding amazing.
Yeah, yeah, he sounds great on this song. I'm glad Lionel Richie wrote a lot of ballads we grew up with and liked, but there's part of me that always wish he just sounded like this, because it's his funk sound with this band, with the Commodores, is incredible.
Yeah, the Commodores are great. I
Yeah.
think they're underrated, and more people should listen to them,
All
especially
right.
the song "Look What You've Done to Me" by the Commodores.
Yes,
So, Jim, you're going to finish off our 5s.
I
We
am.
got
I
the
am.
last one.
And I'm going to go with the least funky man of all time.
Oh,
I
I
am
know what
going
it is too.
I am going to go with Barry Manilow's I Write the Songs.
Oh, so is this the sweet and the sour sauce in between the
This
sandwich?
this is right there in everything I like about music. So when I was probably 3 to 4 years old, I can remember loving getting excited about seeing Barry Manilow come on a television special. He had a smile, he could sing. There was just something great about what he brought in his presence to music for me as a little kid. You know, maybe in the way for some people it was the Bee Gees in a cheesy sense, or
Mhm.
the Carpenters in another way. I won't rob Barry Manilow from being as great as either of those two acts. He started out as a piano player for Bette Midler. He, went on his own and he was writing jingles. He wrote a lot of jingles for commercials. So if you don't know any Barry Manilow songs, you're probably wrong, because he wrote the State Farm is There jingle. He wrote the McDonald's You Deserve a Break Today jingle. I mean, come on. It's
Barry Manilow.
Barry Manilow. Everybody knows Barry Manilow. But I Write the Songs. When I think about the fact that he wrote all these jingles that get stuck in your head, and then I came across I Write the Songs, I was like, well, he does. I write the songs to make the whole world sing.
Jim, if we had both had about 3 more beers, this would have turned into karaoke with that song.
Probably. And
right?
And we could do another show down the road with Coca Cabana comes out. We'll probably get that going as well. Yeah.
Coca Cabana, Jesus Christ. Oh no, but I'm glad you bring Barry Manilow on here. I rate the songs. When I first saw it, I'm like, oh, you couldn't have waited and picked a better Barry Manilow song. And then I listened to it and I was singing along with it, because his choruses, especially, he builds up to them with this grandiose.
And then the key change at the end.
Oh yeah, you gotta have the key change.
Yeah, he's got the key change. Yeah.
You know what would have been really interesting and I don't know, maybe it happened, if him and Freddie Mercury had ever gotten together in the studio, what they could have accomplished. Oh my God, it would have been.
Yeah, because vocally he's incredible.
Oh,
absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. And people want, like what you were saying, the smile, you almost get like the wink and the nod. He's just non-offensive, and he's trying to show you a good time.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're here to have fun. Let's be happy. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's supremely talented. You can't knock that.
If music were a loaf of white bread in the 1970s, it would have been Barry Manilow. He was the Wonder Bread of the 1970s.
Yes. But he would have had a light coating of jelly.
Yes.
just add a little sugar, a little more sugar.
Awesome. 1975.
We're done.
Yeah.
Yay. 1975 is done. So I chose 75.
We don't get to
Did you-
choose what's next.
Oh, that's right. There is no
Yeah,
choice
there's no
because
choice.
we've talked about it.
We've
and-
gone through another decade of music now, Matt.
Oof, it's going by so fast.
It is. That's
We're
20
only
years
20
now.
years old now. Oh shit, we still can't drink.
Not yet. We can drink on the we'll be legal when we reach the year after the cleanup episode. But that's where we're headed, folks. We have
You
to.
thought it was safe.
Yeah, we got to do another cleanup episode, but we're going to change things up this time a little bit. We are not going to just focus on the previous 10 years because we felt like the first cleanup episode was a little awkward because we were just kind of like, but what if we didn't find anything in that year that we gave a shit about again another time? And then we're forcing stuff to talk about.
So but this time we're kind of answering questions that we pose to ourselves.
Yeah, and talking about kind of the development on our experience in doing the show and the opinions that might have shifted or changed or things we've thought of over that time that we haven't really talked about yet. So I think the next cleanup episode won't necessarily dig into, well, in 1975 and 1988, we will stay away from the 2000s for Matt. No, we probably won't. Yeah. We'll talk about Matt's rants a little bit, but we'll also talk about what we learned from that. And I think it's going to be a pretty significant episode for us in our growth of learning about music as we go through the show.
Yeah, and we always like getting to add more songs to the playlist.
We do. But the rule is we can add them from any time in the show previously at this point.
Yes.
And we're not going to
be tricky.
Yeah.
The more cleanup shows we do, we're going to have a wider net.
Which means you're going to hear a lot more songs that you have no clue that Matt gets to bring in.
Oh, wait. So, wow. I thought I knew what my 5 was going to be, but I could probably choose 5 Ramones songs.
There you go. That day's going to come, folks. All right, everybody. That is our show. Thank you for listening to the JAM Yearbook. We are happy to get through this next decade of music, even though we broke the years up along the way. Matt, once again, it was great to do the show with you tonight. I'm looking forward to doing a cleanup episode with you. Say goodbye to everybody.
Jim.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everybody. And Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for participating on the Facebook page. And keep in mind that we are on TikTok. So, yeah, see what kind of silliness goes on there.
Yes. Hashtag the JAM Yearbook. Find us. There we go. All right. Good night, everybody. Peace, love, and podcast.